Hi all, I'm going to do some musings about Doctor Who Series 13 Episode 3, Everything But the Kitchen Sink, I'm going to call it, but it's actually called Once Upon Time. Similar to the previous episode, I found this very difficult to think about, muse over, or even talk about really. If it goes like the last one, will mean this is a very long video, or rather longer than planned. There was just something about it again that left me cold, and I don't understand why. There were certain themes and ideas in it that should have appealed. There was a lot going on. I mean, a lot going on. There were some questions answered, though I'm not sure you could say they were answered satisfactorily or even completely, or even that they were that important to questions to answer. And it raised way more. So I don't know, but I'll go through it. It's a difficult one to go through in any kind of structural sense because it is literally all over the place. So I may abridge some of this. So at the end of the last episode, we had Yaz and Vinda in a situation where Swarm was going to click his fingers and time was going to stream through them, which allegedly would kill them. That's the quick flashback you get at the beginning. And then the episode disappears to somebody else. A woman called Belle, who is looking for somebody. She's self-narrating about trying to find somebody, and she spends most of the episode avoiding threats, avoiding blue sparkly things in the sky, which we'll come on to, avoiding Daleks who make a very brief bad CGI'd appearance, fighting Cybermen remarkably easily and shooting them multiple times in a really badly edited scene, then having quite a nice payoff at the end, which I'll come to. So that bit's interspersed throughout the rest of the episode. And given the rest of the episode is already a bit of a mess, that doesn't actually help. Going back to the actual story, how does the Doctor get them out of this terrible situation? Well, we all know the Doctor has very quick thinking and kind of goes to her mind palace to think. So the Doctor kind of quickly thinks in the instant that Swarm's fingers are clicking, and she decides that what she's got to do is move like the Flash. And in the time between his fingers clicking and time flowing through Yaz, the Doctor gets Dan off the plinth in the Temple of Nonsense, stands on one of the Morai's areas, plinths, I don't know what you'd call it, sticks a sonic in the air and basically funnels all the energy that was going to go through Vinda and Yaz into herself. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Ronson Sonic Screwdriver. Having trouble with a Dalek? Cybermen on the march? Weeping angels, constantly advancing. Never fear, your suspiciously shaped sonic screwdriver from Ronson will help you out of literally any situation. Just waft it around like an idiot, and all of your problems will go away. The Sonic Screwdriver by Ronson, available for just an introduction price of £19.99, and is flung into, I can't really call it a time vortex, just kind of into time. It's this weird wibbly wobbly space, and this is shockingly bad CGI, Rent-A-Ghost level quality. And there she sees Yaz, Dan and Vinda, and then suddenly they're zoomed off and she's sort of, oh no, time's taking you away, and then a weeping angel appears and then she's disappeared off herself. She wakes up in her own timeline, which you later find out in this episode is actually from Ruth's timeline, and the memory she's got is her seemingly last mission as Ruth's Doctor for the Division. And the mission is to stop Swarm, and because they're in the Temple of Nonsense already, they've got hostages, and I'm not sure what they're demanding, but they're demanding something. This again is interspersed throughout. The Doctor's consciousness drifts in and out of this memory, and she drifts in and out of the time zone memory and into the others' memories. So the whole of that basically ends up with them defeating Swarm and Azure, who apparently are known as Ravagers, by bringing the Maori into the universe and putting them into the controlling space. And what you learn in that whole bit is that Ruth's Doctor Well, one of the things you learn is that Ruth's Doctor is way better than Jodie's Doctor. The minute Ruth appears on the screen, she has an intensity that's totally lacking from Jodie. What else you learn is that the Time Lords created the planet Time. Yes, the planet's called Time. And the temple to be able to control time. And the Ravagers don't want time to be controlled, it seems, although their motives are very vague still. Meanwhile, Dan is flitting through his own timeline. You see him basically forming a relationship with the girl who was from the first episode and got kidnapped by Azure. We then see him at a position where he's somewhere in time, and he's in tunnels, presumably the ones dug under Liverpool, with the industrialist who was responsible for digging them. There's an exchange between them that doesn't make much sense. The little blue things fly again because apparently what they're doing is cleaning the timeline because the timeline's got corrupted. And the Doctor kind of appears and disappears and explains to him what's going on, that she's hiding him in his timeline, which contradicts what was said earlier. Vinder, this bit's kind of more useful, but you basically find out who Vinder is and what Vinder's about, or at least a little bit of who he is and what he's about. You find out that he blew the whistle on a character called the Serpent as part of a deal with another species, demanded that certain people were killed or returned. He blew the whistle and then basically got put into the space station, which is called Rose. His little bit ends with him sending a message to his love. And we find out at the end of that his love is Belle, the character we were following. So that was quite interesting, although to be honest with you, there's a lot more questions raised than actual answers. And again, I'll get onto that at the end. Yaz is flitting through her timeline. The Doctor appears to explain it to her again. She keeps experiencing visions of weeping angels. Now, I'm presuming she knows what weeping angels are. She ends up in one situation, she's playing a computer game with her sister, and then a weeping angel start coming through the screen. And then it's in her room, pretty similar to The Time of the Angels, the episode with the Byzantium crashing. Like the angel did with Amy when it kind of came out the screen. And Yaz smashes the console they're playing on. So the Doctor's kind of memories start ending. She sees the Maori who are telling her that she needs to leave time, or I'm not sure where they are. And you get a sense that they don't necessarily belong. They control time, they're part of time, they don't belong. And the Doctor comes up with a plan to defeat Swarm and Azure in what we will consider the present. The plan is exactly the same plan as was used to defeat them the last time. So that was quite convenient that the Doctor went back to a time where she could see how to beat them, and then beats them exactly the same way. Zooming back to the present, the plan's enacted. Basically, the plan was to bring the Maori back that had been destroyed. Swarm basically doesn't care because the damage had been done. He only needed a slight interruption in time for his plan, which again, we don't know what it is. Yeah, that sounded way more simple than the whole episode was, but if you can imagine all of those elements dotted about through the episode, interrupted. We went to see Yaz 3 or 4 times, Dan jumps multiple times. Vinder, although his narrative is relatively linear, he still jumps about 3 times. The Doctor is jumping as well. Within that, you've got Belle, who's got a linear timeline, but she's jumping throughout it too. Then you've got the Doctor jumping into other people's timelines, and you've got the Doctor jumping into the timey wibbly wobbly bit, and then you've got the present. So if you can imagine all of that woven into some sort of coherent story, which it really wasn't. But interesting ideas. What then happens is the Doctor, Yaz, Dan and Vinder go back in the TARDIS, and they take Vinder back to his home planet, finds it's destroyed, and says he has to find somebody. And it's this point that you find out that Vinder's wife or partner, Belle, is pregnant, and they're looking for each other. That was quite a nice little, weirdly a nice little emotional hint for a second. Then the Doctor and Dan and Yaz get back in the TARDIS. Yaz checks her phone, and there's a weeping angel on her phone. And then suddenly the weeping angel's in the TARDIS and is flying the TARDIS. Cliffhanger, which obviously will just not pay off because we've already seen what's happening in the next episode and nobody dies, there's no real threat. Some actually decent and nice special effects, some nice visions and vistas and stuff. Some really bad special effects to go with that. A bit of character development of Vinder. A few interesting questions thrown out, which I'll come on to. a reasonably organic way of introducing the Weeping Angels, although I'm not sure it really makes much sense at the moment. Oh, I forgot to mention that at one point in the Doctor flitting through her own timeline, she appears at a future point, or a past point, not sure which, where we find out that the flux is man-made and it's been caused because of the Doctor. And this person who's in the future basically has no time for the Doctor and dismisses her. So I say, it should have liked it. There were interesting concepts, interesting ideas, and I didn't have any real trouble following it. But a quick breakdown, as far as I can tell, of what I could glean from this episode. So the Time Lords made the temple to control time. I'm presuming the Maori are some sort of interdimensional beings that have the ability to control time. Still no clue what Swarm and Azure want, or what their powers are, because they seem to be whatever the script demands of their powers. Who is Vinder? What has he got to do with the story? Why did he escape the space station and suddenly appear at the Temple of Nonsense? How does he know about Time Lords and TARDISes? Who is Bell, and who is their baby? Then you have the Maori. It's like, where do they come from? Why can they do what they do? Why do they seem to stand motionless in a temple? How did the Time Lords get them into the temple? Then you have the Flux. Who created it? For what purpose? If it only affects space, how did that mean the Sontarans were travelling in time? How did everybody know the Flux was coming? Because so many people seemed to know about the Flux and the Doctor didn't. But that's not surprising, because the Doctor never knows anything. What's Dan's intended girlfriend got to do with anything? Or rather, what's Dan got to do with anything? Because the Ravagers kidnapped his to-be girlfriend to use as a bargaining chip against Dan. Now, Dan had a vision of which I presume was his future, but his future, he met the industrialists from 1820 or 1810 or whatever it was, in the tunnels. Now, are the tunnels a mirror of the Temple of Nonsense? Is there some relationship there? What are the Weeping Angels doing? Why are they interested in Yaz? Why are they in the timeline? Why are they even involved in this story? Hopefully we'll find out in the next episode. What, indeed, is the Ravagers' plan? There doesn't seem to be much of a plan at the moment. Why was the other Ravager, because there was a male and female Ravager in the Doctor's past, why did he not look like Swarm? Was that a different person? Was the female Ravager a different person? Why was the space dog with Ruth's Doctor in the past? But then we have the main problem with a lot of this. The Doctor's life is not linear. To explain what I mean is, she has her experiences in a linear way, but she doesn't live her life through time in a linear way. She could live a year in the future, she could live a year in the past, she could live a year in the present. To her, that will be an experience of 3 years, but she'll experience it in several points. And it'll be the same with the Time Lords. You can't say the Time Lords are destroyed because they travel in time. Therefore, if you destroy them now, they can just travel from the past to the future, so they'll still be in the future because they've already gone to the future. The future and the past can kind of collide. So it's all a little weird. I mean, there is a theory that Vinder and Bell's baby is the Doctor, which is entirely possible because obviously somehow the baby could be sent back in time to the beginning of the Time Lords. And apparently there's a point at which Bell wonders what Vinder will look like. So is there an element of regeneration to them as a species? But then my understanding was that the Time Lords were the only species that could regenerate, unless we're now creating another species that can regenerate. In fact, is Vinder even from this universe? Is he from a parallel world? This is the problem, is that I don't want everything necessarily tied up in a nice neat bow, but it raises so many questions, this episode, and doesn't satisfactorily answer anything particularly. And the information it gives is so slight and adds to more questions that it just doesn't feel fulfilling. And that might be one of the reasons why I struggled with this episode. I don't know. It was, again, use the magic word. I think it was less than okay, actually. I think I felt less about this episode than the last time. And I think the whole Bell situation in an already complicated story made the whole thing much, much worse. as much as her arc was fine and it had a good payoff, it just made everything else a bit worse. So anyway, here's this bit. Here is the shameless plug for Marked by myself, Andy Radbourne, which is available through Indiegogo, and the link is down below in the description. Check it out, see what you think, and I'd appreciate your support. Thank you very much. Peace out.